think it started yet. Has it?
I think
Oh,
so.
yeah, I can see that.
Mhm.
Greetings, I'm here with Virtual J, and Virtual J is here because I'm going to talk a little bit about the emergence of strategic human capital, and Jay plays a really important part in this story. So when he was president-elect at SMS, he approached me and said, hey, why don't we create some space for HR people who are in this domain and strategy people who are interested in this domain to begin to converse, to dialogue, or just a place where they can commiserate.
I remember talking with Russ Coff in the hallway after some session, and he said, oh yeah, we're going to be thinking about getting this interest group going for human capital, right?
Suppose what I tried to do in the year and the sessions I had control over, I think it was the Sunday sessions or something like this, was to kind of introduce the economics of human capital in a stronger way. Not that this hadn't been sort of considered and wasn't part of what people were thinking about, but my recollection is to try to bring in some folks that were doing cutting edge economics work in the human capital space.
What we found early on was that we had, in a sense, two tribes in this interest group, the people from HROB and the people from strategy. And not perfectly, but there was some overlap of that between people who were primarily psych-based and people who were economics-based.
It was kind of difficult for people, particularly on the psych side, to understand what the people, particularly the economists, were saying. I'll call it, relationships or network. Those are the people that were coming from kind of the strategy side. I mean, they've been going to SMS for years, so they knew everybody. And so at the cocktail hour, they were all hanging out together and talking with one another. And then all of us psych people were hanging out and talking to one another because we didn't really know anybody else.
When I began to work on strategic human capital as it's known today, there was no such thing as the interest group. The interest group seemed to sort of almost magically appear around the same time that I seemed to need it in my own career.
Jay had a PhD student at Ohio State by the name of Janice Malloy, who was an HR student who was kind of lost in some respects amongst her HR faculty because she was too strategic. He saw that she was sort of a misfit amongst the HR people, and that's how I started my career, as a misfit amongst HR people. So he thought, maybe Russ knows something about how to sort of create a space where these misfits could talk to each other.
However, I noticed very little communication between strategy scholars and HR scholars. I noticed that the strategy scholars, when I would go to their sessions at Academy of Management, that they were reluctant to speak with me. And when I went to the HR sessions, I found very little interest in a lot of the research going on. I remember going to my first Strategic Management Society meeting. This was the first time I'd been to any of the strategy conferences. It was the first time I felt like I was home. Like these are my research people. This is the community I can talk to and relate with in terms of my interests.
I love that when you go into one of our interest group sessions, if you're presenting, regardless of who you are, you're guaranteed to be listened to, challenged, possibly disagreed with, but always supported.
So I think one of the things that I love about the Strategic Human Capital Interest Group is that the entire group within SMS feels like it's a very vibrant community, a vibrant research community, a vibrant conversation. And it also feels like it's a very open community. It feels like I've heard a number of our colleagues in the Strategic Human Capital Interest Group call this a home, and not just a research home, the place where we put our papers, but also a sense of community, that we have positive interactions with each other, we're supportive with each other.
So the awards that we put together that continue to this day was done during that time. And the idea of sort of explicitly trying to encourage this integration of strategy and HR by having an award for interdisciplinary work, in addition to sort of good work, right? So we have these 2 awards, and one of the ideas was let's encourage people to sort of really bridge these perspectives.
So I had a really interesting conversation at one SMS meeting with John Dellery, and he came up to me and he said, I just realized that supply side mobility constraints, basically you're talking about voluntary turnover. And I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, we are talking about voluntary turnover.
At our annual conference, we decided to try a new format for our Sunday morning sessions, where we got one senior scholar who was on the macro side and one senior scholar who was on the micro side of a conversation. And the micro scholar would develop a reading list of 5 core articles that represented that side, and the macro person would choose 5 articles, and then they traded articles. They read the other articles beforehand, and they came to the session to present, here's what we've learned from the other side. It's sort of demonstrating thinking across the aisle.
I was invited to write an essay in the newsletter, which I just pulled out recently. And some of the ideas that I articulated there still, ruminate in my head. And I was pulling this out and thinking, I really need to more formally write this up.
It's probably pushed me more towards strategy than I originally started out as. And so my brand has always been to be a strategic HR guy who was really serious about the strategy, but I probably got as firm an identification as a strategy scholar now, at least in my mind, as I do as an strategic HR scholar. So I really do sit at that intersection, but I'm kind of really in it now more than I once was.
I think one of the things that's really helped me is that, learning the more econ side. And so, I'd had 2 econ, macro and micro econ as a PhD student, that was part of the MBA program. So I kind of knew the basic concepts, but not really econ terms in terms of, say, human capital theory.
And when Tom Moliterno and Pat Wright and I were the co-editors of a special issue in Journal of Management, we had this really cute idea of every paper would have an HR reviewer and a strategy reviewer. We thought, that'll be great. It'll facilitate this dialogue. Well, what happened is every single submission had one reviewer who liked it and another reviewer who hated it.
I put together a panel of folks, and I think some of them had been prior chairs of the IG. And I asked the question, how have we, in the years that we've been working as an IG, how have we made progress on this agenda? I remember looking out at the audience that day and noting what a sort of an interesting combination of folks we had in the room. We opened it up for discussion from the floor. The late great Dave Deepak sitting there in the front row and saying, I'm gonna be honest with you, it feels to me like every year or two we re-ask this same question.
There had been a great beginning, but a lot of us were then asking the question, now what, and how do we take it from here? And I remember one particular meeting at the SMS of the interest group where there was some very animated discussion, and as you might imagine, Anthony Nyberg was very involved in that discussion. I was trying to remember what exactly was discussed, but I remember more the emotion and the excitement of the discussion than the actual content. But what was interesting was that, there was clearly sort of the sense that we need to sort of try to do more things.
So one of the things that I have loved recently is our new initiatives in the Strategic Human Capital Interest Group on mentoring. We have this mentoring program for doctoral students where junior faculty serve as mentors, and we have a mentoring program for junior faculty where more senior faculty serve as mentors. And we have these wonderful interactions that are emerging. And we were really pleased with, we just finished our first year of this mentoring program as a pilot program. Uliyat Solomon and Aaliyah Crocker did wonderful work as RALs in our engagement chair of the interest group to design this program. And we had just really positive messages from our junior faculty of how great that experience was and how useful it was to have this mentoring experience. So we're now getting ready to roll out our second year.
I actually think that going forward, what we might want to do is take the people that we have and interface a little bit more with some of the other domains within strategy. So strategic human capital really intersects with every single other interest group.
For people who don't necessarily know how this works, we submit our proposals to SMS, but then the proposals that get accepted, they kind of go into a big pot. And all the interest group program chairs sit around a table and try to put sessions together. And lots of times they're putting papers from the knowledge and innovation group or the stakeholder group together with human capital papers to try to create a session that's a joint session. We almost doubled the number of human capital papers by looking at human capital related papers that had been submitted to other interest groups. I think that's one of the opportunities for us moving forward, is that we have been really focused on building this home for people who primarily identify as strategic human capital folks. And that's fantastic. And now we have an opportunity to, I think, broaden the tent a little bit and welcome more people into the community. These folks who might not see themselves as strategic human capital folks as their primary research identity, but whose perspectives and capabilities are critical for us as a community as we try to grow this conversation forward.
Yeah, I think, okay, we are recording now.
Yeah, I was supposed to be organizing the socials. So the video is the
social part.
thing. Yeah.
How long was that?